Hi everybody, Mike Beer here. I got your Wednesday race of the day. We're going out to Canterbury Park for that stakes-laden card on Wednesday night. Your race of the day is going to be race number 8, the Mystic Lake Derby for 3-year-olds, going 1 mile on the turf course at Canterbury Park. Big field of 11 entered for this $150,000 purse. And here's your field for the Mystic Lake Derby right now. Just a quick reminder, you can use that QR code that you see on your screen right now to take a look at free past performances of this race on your mobile device. The PPs will also be available at the Race of the Day event page at DRF.com. Good field. I think it's the kind of race that you might want to take a look at here. Sort of a wide open kind of race. I think there are probably 2 main horses who are expected to maybe take maybe 2.5 horses who are expected to take the bulk of the money. The morning line favorite is the 8, as you can see there, number 8 Stitched. He's 5-2 on the line. He could certainly go favorite in this race. This is a horse who's never really taken that much money so far in any of his starts, but he is 4 for 5 on the grass. He comes into this off of two consecutive wins, including a stakes race in Indiana in his most recent start. So, I mean, certainly this horse could be favored. Personally, I felt like either the 6 Dowagiac Chief, who's 4-1 on the line, or even the 10 Heaven Street. I thought either one of those 2 horses could also wind up taking money here and perhaps even being the favorite come post time. Both of those horses also have plenty to recommend them in a race like this. They're both shipping in from bigger circuits. They are also both stakes winners on the grass prior to this. There are things to like about those 2 horses. We'll see how the betting all plays out. It certainly could be Stitch who's favored, but I didn't feel like it had to be, and I thought there were things to recommend other horses in this race. But there's certainly plenty going on and cases to be made, I feel like, for maybe just several different horses in here. Let's start out by taking a look at the Timeform US Pace Projector. They are, again, sort of projecting a fast pace for this race. They have the number 6, Dowagiac Chief, out there on the lead. They don't think he's going to be going too slow up there. So we'll see, how hard he has to work if they do indeed want to go forward with him. And listen, that is his running style. I mean, all of his races, especially on the grass, they just like to go forward with this horse, put him on the lead. That was certainly the case in his most recent start in the American Turf, a really tough grade 2 on the Kentucky Derby undercard. They're over that turf course, which, obviously you want to be a little lenient to poor performances over that turf course. It seemed like some horses liked it, some horses didn't. Dowagiac Chief, maybe he didn't. I don't know. They just put him on the lead that day. He gave way pretty badly in that race to finish last. But, I'm sure they'll go forward with him in here. He's, certainly going to use his speed in this race to try to go forward. They also have the number 5, Magoo, who is switching back to turf here. He's only run on turf once, this horse, that in his career debut, going 5 furlongs. Since then, he's stretched out pretty effectively. He was on the lead in his most recent start on dirt. It's not, he's not necessarily a true speedball. I don't know if he's going to necessarily go forward in here. The 10 Heaven Street, tactical kind of horse, been on the lead a couple times in his races, but he doesn't have to be. He's pretty handy. I think they'll go forward with him. I doubt they're going to be on a dead send. And if the pace is fast, I don't think you're going to see him, trying to, be up there contesting things. I think they'll try to get a spot with that horse sort of up close to the pace. The 7 Switzer, another horse stretching out, just made his turf debut going 5.5, and he was off the pace that day. But on the stretch out here off of 2 shorter sprint races, he could certainly go forward in this race. We'll see. We'll see how fast Dowagiac Chief has to go. I do think he's going to make the lead in this race, and I do think he's one of the horses to beat as well. So if they don't wind up forcing him up there, he could be pretty tough to catch. Let's start looking at some of the contenders here. Number 1, Chrome King, is 20-1 on the line. I didn't think he was a contender in this race. He has won on turf in the past. He just missed by a nose in a little stakes race at Turf Paradise earlier this year. That wasn't a particularly strong race. He did come back out of that race and win a stakes race on the main track. He's a pretty versatile horse. There's nothing wrong with him. I just feel like he's in a pretty tough spot here. He did land in a pretty good post down on the rail, though. The number 2 is Next Journey. Only 4 starts so far. Very lightly raced gelding, shipping in here for trainer Jonathan Wong. Actually made a start on this turf course here at the end of May. Came up short, second best in that race with only a 59 buyer. At this stage of the game, he's just a little too slow to win this race. He did break his maiden first time out on the grass. He's improved slightly since then. I think he's got to improve a lot more against this field. We'll see if he can take a step forward, and we'll see what kind of trip he gets. The 3 is Slim Slow Slider, another horse at a big price on the line. I thought this horse was mildly interesting. It'll be very interesting to see what he does in this race. He started out for trainer Wesley Ward as a 2-year-old. You expect those horses to be pretty precocious and be ready to go. That wasn't the case with Slim Slow Slider. He debuted in a short sprint at Churchill Downs last summer. I didn't think he really ran well at all in that race. They took him to Saratoga and stretched him out for a second start. And once again, I thought that was a pretty poor performance. In his defense, he did get caught really wide in that race. They tried to go forward with him from the outside post. He got caught a good 4 wide around the first turn. He never got to save any ground in there. And then he just came out completely empty. It was a pretty poor performance, even with the trip factored in. So he's a horse who I didn't like either of his 2 turf starts as a 2-year-old. He wound up getting claimed for $15,000 out of his maiden win on the synthetic, the all-weather track there at Turf Paradise. I think this horse has actually really improved though for his new trainer now. He won another race on that on the Turfway Park all-weather surface in March, and I thought he looked good winning that race. They came back in the rushaway against a decent field, and I thought he ran a good third in the rushaway. His buyer declined a little, and he wound up getting tired in the stretch. But man, he didn't break great in that race. He was in some traffic. He wound up wide, moving all the way up the backstretch to contention on the outside. Continued on contesting the pace around the turn, and was really game through the stretch. And he wound up having to settle for third. I thought he ran pretty well in that race, though. And then they came back to turf with him for his most recent start, the Caesars, where Stitched beat him. But to me, this horse just had no chance in that race. I don't know what his rider was thinking from the gate in there, because this horse broke fine, but they just took a hold of this horse. They took him back off the pace while Stitched got in front of him to the lead. The pace was super slow. And, after this horse got shuffled back even further on the backstretch, his rider just had no choice but to try a wide run around the second turn. It wasn't that kind of race. That kind of move was never going to work out. I think he ran deceptively well last time. I think this horse has improved as a 3-year-old, and he's a price in here. The 4 is Tonka Warrior. Turf debut, route debut, a little bit of turf in the dam side. It's probably Cupid is sire. I think he gets distance from Cupid. He hasn't been a particularly strong turf sire so far. It's not a huge sample. He's about 9% with his turf routers so far, Cupid as a sire. The dam only went 1 for 12, but her only win was on turf. She has dropped 2 turf winners so far. I don't know. Maybe this horse will handle the stretch out and handle the turf. I think it's certainly possible. I really respect this trainer, and if this is the race that he picked out for him, maybe that's a good sign. And it's not like his 2 dirt races are bad. I think he's run well on both of those. So there's something here. I don't know. We'll see what kind of price he is. I wouldn't take any kind of short price on him, but he's 15 to 1 on the line and could drift off of that. The number 5 is Magoo. Again, the only turf start for Magoo came going 5 furlongs in his debut. He didn't really have any speed in that race. He raced on a little bit. He didn't run that well in there. He raced on a little bit through the stretch. He actually got outfinished from behind for 6th in there, which I didn't love. I don't know. He's gotten a little bit better since then. His most recent start back here at Canterbury Park was a win in an allowance race going a mile on the dirt. So he can handle the distance. When you go back and watch the replay of that win last time, though, they just put him on the lead. He did turn away pressure from the eventual runner-up in that race. Got some separation through the stretch, and then just held on at the end of that race. He caught a very lucky bob to get that win. He ran fine. It was another step in the right direction. We'll see if he can bring that improvement with him to turf. Dowagiac Chief is the 6th. I don't know. He's one of the horses to beat in here. I thought maybe he would be the favorite come post time. He's already a stakes winner on the turf. He has speed. He likes to go forward. I think he will probably make the lead in here. The stakes win for him came 3 starts back at the fairgrounds. I didn't think that was a particularly compelling performance. He won the race very easily, though. I don't know. He with an 88 buyer as well. He's a horse who could easily win here. I don't think you want to be too hard on him for his last 2 races. One of those, a grade 3 on the all-weather at Turfway Park, and then the last one on that Churchill turf course. I don't really care about those races. I just don't like his other races enough to really want to take a short price on him. And I do think he's going to be a short price in here. That being said, he might be the horse to beat. I don't want to sit here and knock Dowagiac Chief too much because he's a nice horse. I'm just not a particularly big fan. Number 7 is Switzer. Turf debut came last time, going 5.5 at Keeneland. Thought that was, maybe a deceptively good race there. He didn't really have any trip trouble. They just sort of saved ground with him, kept him on the rail the entire way. He had to do some edging off to get clear through the stretch, and then he did rally late. They had to go back inside with him. He was running on pretty well through the wire of that race, I thought. All in all, a pretty good turf performance. I think he did handle the grass, and it was a pretty big step forward as far as figures go. The 77 buyer, a career best by several lengths. So I think this horse improved last time. I don't mind him stretching out either. I think he's got enough pedigree to handle at least a mile of this race. So we'll see. Some things to like about this horse, who could be a fair price as well. Also worth pointing out, the horse that finished about 2 lengths behind him there in 4th in that last turf race. He got a similar trip to this horse as well. Did come back, stretched out at Belmont Park last weekend and pulled off a pretty big upset against a pretty good allowance field too. So Horses have run well out of that most recent start. So there are things to like about Switzer at a price. The 8 is stitched. Morning line favorite. I wouldn't be betting him as the favorite in this race, but there's, again, nothing to really knock about his turf form. 4 for 5 on the surface. Coming off of a stakes win in his most recent start there at Indiana. Actually, we'll take a look at that race right now. This is the $150,000 Caesars. Just got a great trip in this race. Didn't have to send from the gate to get to the lead. He had no trouble making the front. Got to ride the rail in there. Was easily holding his advantage on the second turn. You see through the stretch, just kicking away as they all tried to make runs. It was way too late as they tried to come challenge him at the top of the stretch. He kicked away. Went to his wrong lead briefly in front there, but changed it back. He won very comfortably at the end. It was another good performance for him. He is a horse who does want to race forward, so maybe he winds up hooked up with Dowagiac Chief in this race, and that wouldn't necessarily be a good thing, not only for Stitch, maybe for either of them. I don't know. He can win this race. I just wouldn't take a short price on. The only loss in his career came to the number 9 in here, Xavey Dave. It's the only horse who's ever beaten Stitched on turf. And Xavey Dave did that 2 starts back for Xavey Dave back in March at the fairgrounds, going to mile 16. Xavey Dave just got a perfect trip in that race. Just sat right in behind riding the rail when Stitched was challenged at the top of the stretch. He drifted out a little bit, left the rail wide open for Xavey Dave, and Xavey Dave just came on through, took it over, and then won very easily at the end of that race. He's run back since then. They tried to stretch him out to 9 furlongs for his most recent start. And, that was at Keeneland against a decent field. He just wasn't good enough in that race. I think if you look at the short comment, bothered, came again. Maybe you feel like he had some kind of an excuse in that race. Personally, when I watched the race back, I didn't think that. I thought this horse had a perfectly good trip in that race. He didn't have enough horse to really get into contention as they came to the stretch. And then he did, sort of race on again at the end, but he was never a threat in there. And I didn't think he had any real trouble to give him a big excuse. He's very lightly raced on turf, though. He did already beat Stitched 2 starts back. Those things are all positives, I guess, for Xavey Dave, and I think you have to like his tactical speed. I didn't like him in this race, and I wouldn't take the 6-1 morning line, but, he's far from impossible. The 10 is Heaven Street. I think he's a major player in this race as well, and another horse, even though he doesn't have the figures of Dowagiac Chief or Stitched, I think this is a horse who I think people would not have a hard time making a pretty strong case for in this race. He's got a little bit of that in and out thing going. He runs a good one, then he runs a pretty poor one, then he runs a good one, that kind of thing going on right now. But his overall turf form is good. He's got great tactical speed. He's a really handy horse, and you saw that, you really saw that in his race 2 starts back. This is his 3-year-old debut at Tampa, the $75,000 Columbia Stakes, going the mile on the turf, and here's the replay right now. Heaven Street sat a great trip in this race, just in hand, tracking a long shot on the lead, very comfortable doing that. Got up to contention on his own and to the top of the stretch, and they set down and took it over. And he won this race pretty comfortably. The horse that's rallying up the inside there, Ben's Malice, is also back in this field, and Ben's Malice ran well in the Columbia also. But he's really no match for Heaven Street at the end. I think Heaven Street was just the best horse in the race, and he wound up winning it. Since then, they took him up to New York. This is when Christophe Clement had him, and he ran sort of a modest 5th in the Woodhaven. Not a performance that was particularly compelling, but it was an okay field there. I didn't love that performance from Heaven Street, but I certainly feel like they found a good spot for him here. Brendan Walsh, his horses have been pretty live through the first part of this year, and I feel like you're going to get a good performance out of Heaven Street, and his tactical speed could really be key here, even from post 10. Javier Castellano is listed to ship out here to pick up the mount. I thought there was a lot to like about Heaven Street. I think the 5-1, if you can get that come post time, I think it's a very fair price on him. The 11 will close it out with Ben's Malice. We just saw him finishing second to Heaven Street in the Columbia. He ran fine that day. Took him back off the pace, saved ground the entire way, had to stay on the rail, and really couldn't improve around that second turn of that race. So he still had work to do as they came into the stretch, but he got through down there. I thought he made a pretty game run to be second best. He has since, he took a little time off that race, and they got him out here to Canterbury for his prep for this in an allowance race. This horse is a Minnesota bred, and he's a pretty good one. So you sort of feel like they had designs on running him in this race. They got him out here for the prep last time, and he ran well. His buyer declined to a 67, winning that allowance race as an odds-on favorite, but he ran well in that race. I mean, just they took him back. He got caught 4 wider on the first turn. He was always on the outside, but he made a move. He was bearing down on the leaders all through the stretch, and he got the job done. A good performance. I feel like a clean trip is going to be really important to this horse. He probably wants some pace in front of him as well to make a run at. But he looks like a sort of a bigger kind horse. I don't think you want to get him, sort of over behind horses and get him stopped. Kind of like what happened in that Columbia 2 starts back. He didn't have a terrible trip there, but it took him a while before he came clear. If this horse can get a clean outside run into some pace, I think he's pretty dangerous in there. I didn't put him on top, but I think this is a race that he can win. And I do want to use him. He's 8-1 on the morning line. We can get the picks up there right now. I just kind of wanted, I'm not way against any of the 3 horses who are likely to take money in here, the 6, the 8, or the 10. I think they're all the logical horses in here. Maybe it's as simple as that, this race. I just kind of wanted to go in a different direction. And I put the 3 Slim Slow Slider on top. I'm going to hope that this horse can continue improving. I think he's really improved for this trainer as a 3-year-old. And, I know Stitch just beat him in their most recent start, but to me, this horse had no chance in that race, the way that it was run. Maybe this race will be a little bit more to suit him, and he'll get a little bit lucky in here at a price, and maybe he can make some noise here. Even if he doesn't win, I want to try to get him in there with the other 3 horses that, who are going to take money in here. I went 3, 10, 7, and 11. I just think this is sort of an interesting race to maybe take some shots in, but the favorites are certainly solid. Really good race here for your Wednesday night race of the day out at Canterbury Park, the Mystic Lake Derby for 3-year-olds. It goes as race number 8. The approximate post time is 9:45 Eastern time. Good luck.